Okay, hi folks. This is the solution for homework number 2, and I I'll do it in several segments, as in the first homework. The first problem that we have here, problem number 4, I have used a PowerPoint, which makes it easier to see what's going on. Okay, so let's see. Here's the problem. It says that look at the point that's given here on the right hand side, okay, and this point is corresponding to the parameter t equal to pi over 6. Okay, so what we're supposed to do is to write the cosine and sine of exact value for the cosine and sine of t, okay, without using our calculator, obviously. Okay, now let me get my my pen worked out here. So let me see. Does that work? No. Sorry, let me get the point. Yeah, right here. Okay, good. So you're asked to find the sine and cosine, and these exact values, this value t is in the first quadrant, and therefore the cosine and sine of it you should have memorized, √3/2 and 1/2. Okay. So when you look at this point on that side, which corresponds to t equal to 5 pi over 6. Now, first of all, notice that the reference number for this value of t is this much. This is why it is pi over 6. Okay, and notice that they have the same height. These 2 points have the same height. Therefore, the sine is the same. The sine is the same, but the cosine of one is negative of the other one. That's why I have a negative of this. Okay? So we got that point worked out. Let's go to the next one. All right. So here is t, the value of t is equal to 2. The value of t is equal to 2. Okay. Is equal to 2 pi over 6, which is pi over 3. Okay, again, it's in the first quadrant, therefore the reference angle for it is pi over 3, just like that. 2 pi over 6, which is pi over 3. Now we want to know about the information about this other point on that side, 2 pi over 3. Okay, now notice that the reference number for this value of t is that much, shortest distance to the x-axis. Therefore, it is 2 of these pieces of pi, which is 2 pi over 6, which is pi over 3. Okay, and notice that again, these 2 points have the same height. Therefore, the sine is the same, √3/2, and the cosine is they're off by minus sign. So the cosine is the horizontal axis. This is negative, as you can see, as opposed to this one that's positive. So we sorted this out. All right. Every time I go to this, I have to change the pen. Okay, good. Now this point is pi over 2 is up here, and obviously you have to know the cosine of pi over 2 is 0 and sine of pi over 2 is 1. That's obvious, because look at the height. This height represents y, which is the sine, and it is 1 because this is a unit circle, and the x is obviously cosine, which is nothing to the right, and it's 0. Now the reference angle is the same because it's still in the first quadrant, pi over 2. But what we want to know is stuff about the point down here. Now this point down here, if you count the number of slices of pi here, there is 9 of them. 9 times pi over 6. Each one of these is pi over 6. Is going to give you 3 pi over 2. Okay, and the reference angle of it is the shortest distance to the x-axis. It doesn't matter whether you go this way or you go that way. The reference angle is still the same. And notice that they have this point down here is has the same x as the one up there, which is 0. So cosine of 3 pi over 2 is 0. And the sine of it, you can see that it's down here, and that is negative of what's up there. Okay? And this way you can do all of them. So we go to the next one. This value of t, let me see. Okay, this value of t is 4 of these. So 4 times pi over 6 is going to give you 2 pi over 3. Okay, and the reference angle is that much, shortest distance to the x-axis, which is pi over 3, and cosine of pi over 3, cosine of 2 pi over 3, you can see is negative, and minus 1/2, and the sine of it is positive, as you can see, this height, which is incidentally the same as that height, which was root 3 over 2. So those first angles you have to memorize. Those basic angles 0, pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3. Those you have to memorize. Okay. Let me go here. This is the next one. We are interested in this angle. I don't want to call it angle. I'll call it the value of the parameter. 7 pi over 6, for example. These two will have the same. These two will have the same x value. Therefore, they're both negative. Cosine of 7 pi over 6, same as cosine of this fellow, which is negative, and the sine are also negative. Okay. These different pages that I'm showing you show you both pairs at the same time, the pair of answers at the same time. Okay. Next one, you go down here. It's these 2 points. I'm going to give you information about these 2 points. Okay. So notice that this is the value of parameter right here. This is the value of t is pi, and the reference angle, the reference number is 0. Shortest distance to the x-axis is 0, and so these two are looking at the answer for these two at the same time. So obviously cosine of this value of t is the distance along the x direction, which is -1, and the sine of it is 0. And by the same token over here, the distance along the x-axis here for 2 pi is 1, so cosine of 2 pi is 1, and the sine of it is 0. Let's do this one now. These two answers, I'm going to give it to you at the same time. We already discussed, we already know everything about this. Okay, so if you look at 5 pi over 3, there's 2 ways to look at it. You can say that, for example, how many slices of pi do you have? 1, 2, 3, all the way 10 times pi over 6, which is 5 pi over 3. So that's why this is t is 5 pi over 3. Or you can go 2 pi minus pi over 3. That gives you the same thing. This is the reference number, pi over 3. And you just look at this diagram. These two have the same cosine. Both of them are 1/2. And the signs are off by minus sign. Okay, so that takes care of pretty much the stuff in this first problem. And here's the last one. I wrote down the correct answer here. You can check it out. Okay, they have the same. Where is this? They have the same cosine. You see that? And the signs are off by minus sign. All right. Good. So let's move on to the next problem. I'm going to close this. Okay. Next problem. It says, okay, give the exact value. Don't put it in your calculator. Of course, you can always check it with your calculator, but the intention is for you to give the exact value. So let's start with, where is the draw? Okay. Okay, so let's start with sine of 5 pi over 6, okay? Now, first of all, let's find out where 5 pi over 6 is. So 5 pi over 6 is right here. If you think about it, the slice of pi, the 3 slices of pi, 5 pi over 6, we put it right there, okay? And therefore, the sine of this is the same as the sine of that, sine of pi over 6, so this is 1/2. And the cosine of 5 pi over 6, this is the cosine, is negative of cosine of pi over 6. So that's why this is minus root 3 over 2. Okay? And obviously tangent, we just write it down what it means. Tangent of t is sine of t over cosine of t. So if you take these two numbers and divide them by each other, 1/2 divided by minus root 3 over 2, and the answer is going to come out to be minus root 3, minus 1 over root 3. Let me write it here. Minus 1 over root 3 or minus root 3 over 3. These are the same thing, the same numbers. Okay, so let's move on to the next fellow. Let me erase these things. But since it's a video, you can stop it and then figure out what I wrote down. Okay. Alright, so let's start with this. Well, first of all, where is 7 pi over 6? 7 pi over 6 is the same as writing it, for example, as pi plus pi over 6. That means it's going to land you right there. So there's pi, this is pi, plus the pi over 6. It lands you right here. Okay, so if you look at it, the reference angle for this is 7 pi over 6, right? There it is. The reference angle for it is pi over 6, which is here, and we know everything about pi over 6. This is the reference angle. Okay, so this is the same as the sine of this is negative of the reference angle. So it's going to be sine of 7 pi over 6 is negative of sine of pi over 6. And sine of pi over 6, we know what it is, 1/2. It's minus 1/2. So this is minus 1/2. Okay? This fellow, you look at that, let's see where it takes us. Minus pi over 6, let me erase these things. Yeah, let me erase these things. Okay. Alright, so let's look at this fellow. Where is minus pi over 6? With t is minus pi over 6, where are we? Now remember, minus means that you go clockwise by the length pi over 6. There it is. So it lands you right here. The reference angle of it is still pi over 6. This is the reference angle for t equal to minus pi over 6. Shortest distance to the x-axis, and we have to know everything about the angles which are in that first quadrant. So just look at it. They have opposite signs, opposite sin, sine, and obviously the same cosine. So this is also minus 1/2. Where does 11 pi over 6 land you? 11 pi over 6, you can think about it as 2 pi minus pi over 6. So you go by 2 pi in the counterclockwise direction, and then you back up. So you back up, you're gonna end up in exactly the same location. So this is 11 pi over 6. You went one full 2 pi, and then you backed up. Okay, and of course the reference number for 11 pi over 6 is still pi over 6, and we know everything about pi over 6. So this is also a minus half, because for pi over 6 the value of sine is 1/2, and therefore for the actual values 11 pi over 6 is negative of that. All right, so let's do the next row. These are important. They will appear in your quizzes and things like that, of course. Okay, let's see now. Let's erase this. Okay, let's look at that fellow. 11 pi over 3. Where does 11 pi over 3 land you? Well, you can think about it. 11 pi over 3, 4 pi minus pi over 3, right? That's 11 pi over 3. And where is that? Well, you go 4 pi, so you go around the circle twice, and then you back up by pi over 3. So you end up right here, 11 pi over 3. And first of all, what is it that you want to find? You want to find the secant of it, 11 pi over 3. Well, first of all, we have to know what it means. It means 1 over cosine of 11 pi over 3. That's what secant is, okay? And what is the cosine of 11 pi over 3? Well, the reference angle was pi over 3, so it's over here. This is the reference angle. This is your pi over 3, and this is your reference. I don't want to call it, again, reference angle. We haven't talked about angles at all. Reference number, okay? So if you look at them, they have the same cosine, and we know everything about cosine of pi over 3. So it is going to be 1 over cosine of pi over 3, which is 1 over 1/2, and the answer is 2. The answer is 2. Okay? Right. Good. So let me erase this. Okay. You want to know what is the cosecant of it. Okay? The cosecant, first of all, you have to know what it means. Cosecant of 11 pi over 3, or cosecant of any angle, is 1 over sine of 11 pi over 3. And because the reference number is pi over 3, it's going to be 1 over. Now notice that they have the same, as far as 11 pi over 3 and pi over 3, the algebraic signs are different. Okay? So it's going to be 1 over minus sine of the reference angle, which was reference number, which was pi over 3. So this is going to be 1 over minus. Now you have to know what this thing is, and that's root 3 over 2. So the whole answer is, this answer has come out to be minus 2 over root 3. Minus 2 over root 3. Okay, let's do the last one in this series. So I'm going to erase this. Erase that stuff. And let's erase all of these. Okay, what is it that we want to do? Secant of minus pi over 3. Well, first of all, let's find out where minus pi over 3 is, because that thing t has changed. Let me also erase these things. All right, I'm gonna draw the unit circle right there. Minus pi over 3 is going to go in the clockwise direction by the amount pi over 3, so it's right there, the same location as before, but that's minus t is equal to minus pi over 3. The reference number for this is same as pi over 3. Shortest distance, so it's going to land you up here. This is the reference number. So notice that first of all, secant means 1 over, this thing means 1 over cosine of minus pi over 3. But the cosine of minus pi over 3, just look at this diagram, it is the same as cosine of pi over 3 and the same sign. Sign mean algebraic sign, positive or negative. Same value. And this is equal to 1 over, now this guy, look it up, is 1/2, and the whole thing is also 2. So we did this entire problem 15. Let's wrap it up by doing 16, and then I stop this video and do another one for the rest of the homework. This homework is one of the most important homework that you're going to get, because it basically makes sure that you understand what the unit circle is, and you can solve problems exactly without the calculator. Okay, now first of all, there is a thing, 7 pi over 6. What does that mean? 7 pi over 6, you can write it as pi plus pi over 6. Now where does that land you? Pi is here, pi over 6 is there. You add, you go in the counterclockwise direction to that location. Now the reference angle for this, remember, is the shortest distance to the x-axis. So it's that much, which will put you up here at t bar is pi over 6. Reference number, I keep calling it reference angle. We haven't talked about angles, so reference number. Okay, first of all, cosecant. The meaning of cosecant is cosecant of 7 pi over 6. The meaning of cosecant is 1 over sine of 7 pi over 6. So as far as number goes, this is the same as sine of pi over 6. But the algebraic sign, we have to watch out. The algebraic sign, notice that they are different. They're negative of each other. So this is 1 over minus, this is 1/2, and the whole thing is the answer to, oops, I'm sorry, what I meant, this was cosine. What I meant was, this is the one that I'm doing. It is minus 2. What I did here for you was cosecant, which is this. So the answer to C is minus 2. Now we're going to go and do the other one, namely A and B. Okay, so let me erase all of this. All of this goes. And we got the answer here. Okay, good. So let's do this one now. 7 pi over 6 landed you here, and the reference number for it is pi over 6. And look at the value of the cosine. They have the same value. So this is the same as algebraic sign. So it's the same as cosine of pi over 6. And we know what this thing is. It is root 3 over 2. Root 3 over 2. Oh, with a negative sign. Right, with a negative sign, because this is on the negative side. The reference angle is pi over 6. So you're on this end, you're at this end. Notice that it has negative value. Okay, minus root 3 over 2. And let's finish it up by doing part B. Let me erase these. Part B is this. The meaning of secant of 7 pi over 6, secant, is 1 over, you have to know these, 1 over cosine, this looks ugly, 1 over cosine of 7 pi over 6, right? The reference number for it was cosine of pi over 6. Now we just have to watch out about the signs. Remember, I'm not saying cosine of 7 pi over 6 is the same as cosine of pi over 6. I'm saying cosine of 7 pi over 6 is minus that, because this is negative, okay? The angle that we are looking at is, or the value of the reference thing is always looked at here. Okay, So this is 1 over minus 1/2, and the answer is -2. That wraps up these problems 6, 7, 15, and 16. I'm going to stop this and do the second segment.